Good afternoon, Bermuda, and welcome back for another Bermuda Youth Connect general election discussion. Today we have a real treat for you because we're talking about immigration with both the leader of the One Bermuda Alliance, Mr. Jarion Richardson, and Minister Jason Hayward from the Progressive Labor Party. My name is Teray Tull, and I'm joined by Ajay Peets. As we go through this conversation today, we encourage everyone watching to send any questions that they may have, and we'll get to them after we get through a couple of questions. This election is fast approaching, and we are grateful to have direct access to leaders and candidates during this election cycle, so please share your questions. So we're going to begin with the opposition leader, Mr. Jarion Richardson. Bermuda has an aging population, and our birth rate has consistently declined. For example, in 2000, there were 750 births in Bermuda, and then in 2022, there were just under 500. From my view, it looks like an estimated 490. These numbers worry both young Bermudians and old Bermudians. How would an OBA government plan to address these population concerns?
Well, we undoubtedly have to increase the population of Bermuda for a number of reasons. And this means that we're looking for newer people to join our community and become part of it in a meaningful way. So the things that we have to do include making things a lot easier to come into and participate in Bermuda. There's a number of hurdles. Both are administrative in nature, some are executive, some are policy, but there's a number of hurdles that make joining our population incredibly difficult. And the things that we would do is we would remove those hurdles right away so that we can make sure that our population is easy to increase. Think of it like a faucet. You know, sometimes you want to turn the faucet one way and let more in, and sometimes you want to turn it down and let fewer people in.
Thank you for that.
So, this is a quote from the government in 2022. I think we have a graphic for that. I would just read directly. From an economic perspective, continued population loss could have serious implications, especially if it occurs rapidly over a matter of years rather than decades. It is important for governments to act quickly to reverse the trend. Given the workforce will decline by approximately 500 persons per year over the next few years as a result of an aging population, it can be assumed that at a minimum they need to be replenished. So, my question is the PLP's
Mhm.
platform commits to revising census and data collection processes to include Bermudians who relocated overseas before 2024 to allow for
Mhm.
data collection account for those who have immigrated. What
Mhm.
would be the PLP's plan to encourage Bermudians who have immigrated to return?
That's a good question. First and foremost, I think we need to ensure that there are opportunities on islands for individuals who seek to return. We are currently engaged in a study which will clearly identify what were the driving factors behind persons emigrating Bermuda. Bermuda has had natural emigration for some period of time. And so when we look at the census numbers from 2000 up until the data we have now,
Mhm.
from 2000 to 2010, we had about um, 112 people leave annually. And then from 2010 to 2016, that doubled to about 230 persons leaving annually. And
Wow.
so we've always had a challenge with um, persons actually leaving. I think the data will show that that number will accelerate a bit more when we look at the data between 2016 and 2024 or 2025 that we're in. And as a result of that, that means we need to do a number of things. We need to ensure that the persons that are in Bermuda, we retain those persons as best as possible. That's including ensuring that there are economic protections, labor protections, and social protections in order to better support those individuals and their families to um, develop and live decent lives in Bermuda, but then also attract persons to come back as best as we possibly can. And that was the study that we alluded to. Once we honed down on the key factors that actually drove people off island, then we can put policies in place to address those particular factors. But it is a huge challenge based off of the overall demographic picture of Bermuda, and that is our aging population.
Mhm.
Thank you both for that. This next question is for both of you. According to data from Teen Services in Haven, Bermuda's total fertility rate is currently at 1.3%. And according to International Planned Parenthood, a sustainable fertility rate for any community is 2.1%. These numbers, along with our aging population, which you both discussed, cause serious concern, and neither the PLP nor the OBA's platform addresses fertility rates directly. Tell us how you would course correct and get Bermuda to a sustainable fertility number of 2.1%. Jarion, we'll start with you, and then we'll go with Jason.
Sure. We have to make it affordable to have children in Bermuda. That's the greatest challenge, or certainly the challenge that we're hearing on the doorstep is, as it stands right now, especially among young folks who are considering starting families, and part of that process is obviously getting into the home ownership process. All of these steps require careful consideration in today's Bermuda because today's Bermuda is so expensive; it's prohibitively expensive. So our birth rate and childcare forms a huge part of that consideration. And until we make it sustainable to have children, then fewer and fewer people are going to have children.
And so it's kind of two-pronged. Number one, we have to accept that in a developed society, fertility rates are naturally going to decline. Number one, just based off of economic and social norms in the country, um, women are prioritizing careers more than ever before. Education leads to women having children at an older age and having less children. We have improved methods of contraception right now, and so um, we are not in the space we were 20 years ago as it pertains to childbirth. But that leaves us with a natural problem that we have to fix. Number one, I agree with Jarian that we have to have an environment that is conducive to having children. And so that's why you see in our platform where we are extending paternity benefits. But then that's why we also extended the child daycare allowance to better support um, families who are actually having children through their particular journey. And so what we're going to find is we're going to continue to expand social benefits for families so it's more conducive to having children. But when we bring down the overall cost of living, then families are more inclined to make a choice around having more children based off of the affordability of having those children. But if we increase the working population, which is the government's plan, that will also um, bring more residents into Bermuda and a childbearing age and increase our overall fertility rate.
Thank you so much to both of you for elaborating on that. So now, moving on to our next question, Jason Hayward, for you. In 2016, the OBA proposed a 15-year pathway to permanent resident certificate and a 20-year pathway to Bermudian status. And the PLP reacted with an advertisement that this policy radically changed what it means to be Bermudian. Dejan Simmons recently tweeted, with this in mind, immigration and education has always been a political act and tool of oppression and division that has yet to correct itself because of systematic interference, miseducation, and electioneering. What about this pathway to status radically changes what it means to be Bermudian? Can you please expand on that?
So the PLP view on immigration is that yes, we welcome non-Bermudians to contribute to our economy, and we also put in place pathways for them to become permanent residents. I think we do want to preserve Bermudian status for those pathways which are carved out in our Immigration and Protection Act currently. Um, there is something unique about being Bermuda, and we need to preserve our culture. We need to preserve our land for opportunities for Bermudians. We need to preserve the opportunities that we actually have. And we don't want to find ourselves in a place where Bermudians do not have opportunities in their own country. And so this is why it was the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act, because it had specific protections in place in terms of job opportunities and land to protect those opportunities for Bermudians. And we want to maintain and protect those opportunities for Bermudians. Even when you meet a Bermudian who has just recently received status, such as a spousal Bermudian, that person refers to themselves as a paper Bermudian. Not my words, the words. I'll meet with somebody and they say I am Bermuda, but then they say I'm a paper Bermudian. And they've even carved out a distinct difference between what it means to be Bermudian for them and what we as born Bermudians with a history and legacy on this island actually feel. And so there is an emotional sentiment around Bermudian, our language, our culture, our sports clubs. We are passionate about a number of things in our society that persons who are just entering our society would not have a natural connection to. Cup match is a prized holiday for us. It's special to us. It's not special to everybody.
Thank you so much for expanding on that. But I would also like to give an opportunity to Jarion to respond if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. Thank you. When I think about Bermudian, there's lots of Bermudian, different kinds of Bermudians to be frank. I mean, if you think about the unique cultural heritage of St. David's Island, or recently we celebrated the 175th anniversary of emigration of Portuguese into Bermuda, and they came in sort of batches. It's a very complicated story, but would any of us now disagree that those who are Portuguese descendant, which I want to say is 1 in 4 of our population, are not Bermudian, and yet they come from a place that was obviously very different from Bermuda. Part of our heritage is we have a lot of different people coming into Bermuda, and yes, there are these core sets of things that make us unique. But I would think of it as concentric circle. It's the core things, and then you sort of go out a layer, a layer, a layer, and that's where the differences come in. And those differences aren't all that bad, just so long as we share the same set of values in our community. Then we're fundamentally Bermudian, and so that's why when I think about population and immigration, things like that, I always think about all those folks who started that journey. You can start life not a Bermudian, but you can be your grandkids, your great grandkids can definitely be born and raised in Bermuda. And so that's what I think about when I think about population and immigration in Bermuda.
If I can add one more to that, is that I'm not clear on how taking a long-term resident and allowing that person to have Bermudian status solves any of our social or economic problems when we start to talk about shrinking population, our aging population, or even our declining workforce. Persons have ability to remain in Bermuda through the laws that we currently have in place. And so I'm not clear on how allowing one to obtain Bermudian status solves that problem that we're faced with.
Jarion, do you want to
If
respond?
Sure, and I'm very mindful. Jason and I have debated many a time in the House of Assembly, so you might be participating in an ongoing conversation instead of a new one. Yeah. So for my point, and the Honourable Minister has heard this, it's multi-generational security over time, and that means that. So when I was at the Bermuda Monetary Authority, I remember having a call with a client a regulated person who said, "Look, I need certainty to be sure." And I later named one of my companies Certainty because that's what someone's looking for when they think about investing. You're thinking about investing years. I mean, years and years, and you're thinking about radically altering the nature of your family over generations and investing in a place. And when I say investing, that doesn't just mean putting cash in. That means putting your heart and soul into that place, participating in charity, sports clubs, the minister mentioned. And to that end, a person who knows that there is a shelf life to their the welcome mat is takes that into consideration. So I think that, and that, by the way, relates to not just the numbers of people in Bermuda. I'm talking about over time, because obviously those folks have kids, and their kids marry into other families. And so we're talking about a great diversity and a great sort of joining together. And the genetic diversity wouldn't hurt either, by the way.
Yeah, I think that highlights the differences between both of you on immigration. So we're going to push forward. The next question that we have is for you, opposition leader Jarion. Primary school enrollment has also steadily declined. In 2011, enrollment rates were at 4,216. And then in 2020, we go down to 3,549. And we're sourcing these numbers from the Ministry of Education. What would an OBA government do to increase the number of students enrolling in primary school and public trust in the public school product? Understanding that this is a very important consideration for people when they decide where they're going to live, where they're going to send their students to school, and whether Bermudians are going to stay in Bermuda.
One of the things when we were drafting our platform is what we started was what is our actual problems and what is our vision for Bermuda, and let's connect our actions with the vision of Bermuda solving these problems. And what we discovered is that these problems are all interconnected. So as much as we're having a conversation, that slide was about education, it's just as much about, or fixing that problem is just as much about the economy. It's just as much about how easy it is to set up businesses in Bermuda or to participate in Bermuda, because that number is reflective of all of these other inputs. And so obviously the education reform process has to have an element of stability and certainty in it. The quality of our education has to be second to none. It has to be a world-class education system, and that's why it draws people in, because people go, oh, well, this education system is fantastic. So it's not just a question of fixing the education system. We have to fix all of the considerations that parents are making to make sure that the number of students goes back up.
Thank you for that. Just a quick follow-up. Can you clarify what a world-class education in Bermuda would look like? Because I know this is something that's mentioned on the OBA's platform, but can you add more color into a world-class education in Bermuda?
Sure. There's two things that I'll bring up, although there's more in the platform. The two things I want to bring up the most is the investment in early childhood education. During our research and during our conversations, our working groups and things like that, it became quite clear that early childhood education is fundamental and key to the success and further life. In fact, it is the building block, and that if a person doesn't get that foundational aspect, then it's very, very hard to remediate or correct later on, if not impossible. So the key was, okay, let's get started on the right foot for as young as possible, getting as much value out of the education system. And so we go, okay, listen, we got to pay a lot of attention to that. The other one is the Independent Education Authority. And when we say independent, that sort of goes across a number of our platform pieces. Independent meaning that I, as a politician, am not touching the day-to-day processes of education. We're going to take the politics out so that we set a policy, and then we obviously monitor for compliance with that policy, introducing accountability, things like that. But we ourselves are not education policy. Education activity isn't dependent on, for example, an election life cycle. That's what we mean by world-class education, is sort of getting that top-down piece right, so that the bottom-up piece, those school leaders, those teachers, they're free to get on with their job, and we are in fact supporting them instead of telling them what to do.
Thank you for that. Minister Jason Hayward, I want to see if you have any responses to that on education, because the PLP has been very keen on education reform. So I want to give you an opportunity to say anything.
Well, certainly the party has a vision for a reformed education system that provides the outcomes that we desire in our society. I am a parent of 5 kids in the public education system, and certainly I want to see outcomes that allow my kids to leave that system and have a path and be placed on pathways to success, whether that be for higher education or empowered to integrate within our society and contribute to our economy. And I think that is the end result of our desire, ensuring that we put our young people on pathways to success. But that means that we had to take a critical look at the system that they were currently um, engaged in and determine whether or not that was producing the best outcomes. I think we concluded that it was not, and as a result, reform was needed. But as we were doing reform, we recognized that it was complex and there were multiple layers of reform that's actually needed. Instruction in the classroom, the way in which we teach our kids, recognizing that kids learn at different um, levels and they progress at different rates. And as a result, some kids need additional support, and how we better best provide those kids with that support in the system that we do particularly have. Rural are problem areas. We recognize that middle school was actually a problem area and not a bump in the road instead of a runway to success. And so we're trying to take out that speed bump so that we can have a clear glide path that our kids can actually follow. What you find that we're doing right now is that based off of the complexity of the reform, um, it looks like a house under construction. But once that house is actually built, what you're going to actually see is kids being able to enjoy a system that leads them on a pathway to success.
That was definitely very powerful, and from both of you, because I'm an early educator myself, so I definitely agree that starting from our roots is always the best solution. So just shifting gears a bit, I have a question for you, Minister Hayward. With initiatives such as the rent to own programs and inclusionary housing policies, the government is addressing affordability concerns. Given Bermuda's limited land and resources, how would the PLP plan to manage potential population growth driven by immigration while ensuring housing remains accessible for all Bermudians?
Again, multi-pronged strategy is required. What we seek to do is increase housing in the city of Hamilton, and that would allow for more persons to reside in the city and free up um, properties on the rental market throughout the island. Additional to that is that we need to change the culture and the relationship between landlords and tenants. There are a number of landlords who are refusing to rent to Bermudians for a number of reasons. Some have had extremely bad experience with tenants. We may need to ensure that we have um, a law in place that works in the best interest of both parties. Number one, there's a contract in place between a landlord and a tenant that needs to be adhered to. And when that contract is actually broken or not being adhered to, then there should be adjudication and recourse for a landlord as soon in quicker manners, in a quicker manner, so that they are less adverse to renting to Bermudians and engaging in long levels of tension. The other thing we need to ensure is that there is a stock of affordable housing. And I'm talking about from a public standpoint. We need to increase public housing throughout the island as well. And so we can't solely rely on the private sector to house the people of Bermuda. We took our foot off the gas pedal as pertains to public housing, but we are now accelerating the uh, capital that we're actually putting in place in that particular space so that we can have expanded public housing throughout the island. I think that housing is a fundamental right, and it's the government's responsibility to ensure that persons are adequately housed.
Thank you for that. Before we move on, I want to make sure the opposition leader doesn't have anything to add on housing.
Yeah, I do. So when we released our platform last year, we were addressing the housing matter because during our research, it became obvious that housing is a key issue. But I mean, everyone knows that, and we had to figure out was, well, why is this issue? Why is this all of a sudden an issue, or a larger one, especially given that we knew that we had such a high rate of emigration, that is Bermudians who were leaving. And equally, we knew about the population reduction as well. So not just Bermudians, that a lot of people were leaving. So you would imagine that we would therefore have more housing stock available. And our research, which again we put in our platform last year, after speaking to landlords, construction bosses, and the like, it became clear to us that that it wasn't a question of whether the house was available; it was a question of whether the person was willing to rent it. And that then led us down this long road where landlords were effectively felt that their houses were at risk where they'd rent it out. Now, just think about that. Now, I'm not talking about the landlords who are, I don't know, 3, 4 houses or however that works. I'm talking about the person who's committed a portion of their income, their savings over a lifetime into putting on an apartment or two, and then are going to retire on that income. Well, as you can imagine, as the population dwindles, the need went down so much. But my point is that they, once burnt, twice shy. They put out the house, then they had a problem. And currently, the imbalance in the landlord-tenant relationship means that it just took them so long to get out of that at that disadvantaged relationship that they went, "I'm just not going to do it." So the landlord tenant rebalance, but there's also other mechanisms. So we also put in our platform the city. It became quite clear that we have an outdated city, especially as it relates to young persons, those who are exposed to more cosmopolitan environments. They're expecting a much more vibrant place. They're expecting residency, activity. They're expecting cafes and shops and things on a more regular basis. And our city is, it looks old. It's built to be old. It's a center of commerce, but it's not a center of family. And so by building in the city, especially building up in the city, that means that the places outside of the city are available, because FYI, if you go to an expat, especially a young 20-something-year-old, they're not really interested in living in a cottage in St. George's. They want to be in the middle of the activity. So we said, okay, great. Let's look at that. So we put that in the platform, but also probate. Right now we have a very lengthy process. Someone passes away, the house goes into the family. It takes a very long time for that property to get into the hands of the family. And typically the house sits derelict during that time period. That means the grass grows, the house falls apart. Everyone knows you lock up a building in Bermuda for a year. No, you don't want to move straight into that building. And then I saw this in the parish constables when I was a police officer. Siblings, then there's an argument relating to who's paying to put the building back on the market. And the long and the short is that the house falls into such a state of disrepair that no one wants to occupy it, no one wants to use it, no one wants to work on it. If you're lucky, it goes back on the market, but at that point, now you need construction people to come in. So we have a couple of problems within Bermuda, within our system, that we can relatively quickly fix that would increase the housing stock.
Thank you. Minister, anything to add before we move on?
No, I think the party has made itself clear, as the government has made itself clear as it pertains to what we're going to do with housing. So we do have approved Hamilton residential schemes and approved Hamilton schemes, which will encourage development in the city of Hamilton to increase the housing stock so that people can work, live, and play in the city. We do now have a new city plan, and the new city plan has more zones, mixed-use zones, to encourage housing development. We are more flexible on the height restrictions now for building upwards in the city of Hamilton. And all of this is to encourage development and residential living in the city. For decades, we've relied on the private sector to provide the majority of our housing needs, but we've identified now with the tension between landlords and tenants. While we're going to correct that, it is still our responsibility to ensure that we increase the public housing stock, and that's what we'll be committed to doing.
Thank you for that. Coming back to you, OBA party leader. The OBA platform discusses the need for economic expansion and sustainability in a changing world. with an emphasis on attracting investment and growing industries like tourism and digital finance. Would an OBA government see immigration as a necessary tool for economic growth? And if so, how will it ensure that population growth remains sustainable, particularly regarding infrastructure resources and social services?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's a lot to unpack in that one, so I might ask you to re-ask that. But
That's okay.
so yeah, so yes, immigration is going to play a key role in economic growth and development in Bermuda. We are a very small place, very few people, and but we offer the world extremely vital financial services. Bermuda plays a key role in the insurance and reinsurance world. And that means that a number of very large countries and a lot of people, millions, billions of people, depend on Bermuda to be a stable and safe place. And to maintain that level of expertise and skill, we need to be bringing people in, and people need to be coming and going on a regular basis. Our financial services industry, our international business industry, these are things that are extremely technical, extremely complex, and you can't just sort of invent more actuaries. But but at the same time, we have to balance this with protecting Bermudians. I take the minister named the act earlier, the Bermuda Immigration Protection Act, and I want to say 1954. It's always been called the Bermuda Immigration Protection Act because its sole purpose is to protect Bermudians. So we have to maintain a constant stream of people coming and going, but at the same time we have to protect Bermudians, and that's why we tend to use the example of Fawcett when we're talking. At some times you're going to need more people, other times you're going to need less people. But it is a careful balance that we have to maintain. Again, because, and Her Excellency, the last governor, passed on to me once, what was it? The world is watching. And I thought, that's a darn good point. The world is watching because the role that Bermuda plays in the world is incredibly important. We are not a backwater. We are central to the financial security of a lot of the world.
Yeah, definitely. Minister, the next question is for you, but if you'd like to add anything or answer that question, feel free.
Yeah, so the government has made clear its plans for developing the economy. And we outlined that in our economic development strategy. What we recognized is that in order for us to have a growing workforce, we needed to ensure that we have robust economic activity across multiple industrial sections to then create jobs and then fill those jobs primarily with able-bodied Bermudians. And then where there was a mismatch between the skills demanded and the skills possessed by our Bermudian population, then we can fill that with expatriate labor. But we've done a good job as it pertains to using immigration as a lever for greater levels of economic development. And that is to attract investment. We have attracted new businesses to Bermuda, and we continue to attract new businesses to Bermuda based off of our business ecosystem. But we also have measures such as the economic investment residential certificate, which allows persons to reside in Bermuda based off of a minimum investment of 2.5. And that's where you can see where you can use immigration as a tool to unlock greater levels of investment in the country without really having to balance opportunities between Bermudians and non-Bermudians, because everybody benefits from that additional investment in business development and things of that nature. But our 5 priorities included ensuring that we improve our entrepreneurship environment in Bermuda. And we want to see a greater number of small and medium-sized businesses and find a way to better support those individuals. In our platform, we are committed to producing a national entrepreneurship strategy that has a clear set of goals that we will accomplish to better support small businesses in Bermuda. But the first part of our economic development strategy was the retention and expansion of businesses which are currently here. And this is what we currently see. We currently see our international business diversifying and actually growing. Where we would have had traditional insurance and reinsurance, PNC insurers at the beginning, We now see more specialty insurers. We also see um, greater number of long-term insurers, but then we see brokerage firms. We see expansion of law firms on the island as well. All of that is adding to our business ecosystem. All of that is creating opportunities for our economy and the people of Bermuda.
Thank you for that.
If I could add to that.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then
Yeah.
Audrey, over to you.
Cheers. Thank you. Yeah, so I literally work in that space, but I've also had a small business myself, and any small business person in Bermuda can tell you that it is a harrowing experience. The first time you look at a payroll tax return, you never forget that day. It is something. And then obviously when you go through, I always remember registering for social insurance, and it was the most pleasant experience. And I blew my mind because everything else was hard. And that's part of what we have to um, tangle with in Bermuda is that a lot of our processes around business are legacy. They're not made in the modern era. In fact, a great example is our exchange control, which deals with incorporations of new entities in Bermuda, stems from 1973. Well, you can imagine that business has changed significantly since 1973. So there's a lot that we can do there. Now, the private sector is typically able to navigate these challenges because they have the resources and they make their living by providing services and navigating challenges. But by no stretch of the imagination should we conflate their success at navigating a challenge with there not being that challenge. And that's not what the minister said, by the way. I just wanted to add that there are still significant challenges to growing businesses in Bermuda and improving quality of life for all Bermudians subsequently. And those have to be tackled as much as anything else.
Thank you so much for that. So just shifting gears a little bit, Jason, I have a question for you. The PLP platform discusses the need for economic expansion and sustainability in a changing world, with an emphasis on attracting investment and growing industries such as tourism and digital finance. Does the government see immigration as a necessary tool for economic growth? And if so, how will it ensure that population growth remains sustainable regarding infrastructure, resources, and so we did this question already,
Yeah, I
didn't
think you
we?
just did that one.
We
Yeah,
did.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I highlighted the wrong one. My apologies. Um, Actually, we only have one more question for Jarion. The OBA aims to attract investors and businesses through immigration reform and economic incentives. What
Mhm.
measures will be in place to integrate long-term foreign workers into Bermudian society while maintaining the cultural and national identity of the island?
Um, I think I sort of spoke on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about that core definition of being Bermudian, and then there are people coming in and adding to that distinctiveness. I mean, today we would say everyone knows what a Matashadas is, but no one, it's just part of our makeup. Now, and there's a number of West Indian dishes that are part of our makeup as well, because we're really quite a hodgepodge. There's a great book about Bermuda called In the Eye of All Trade that speaks to how all these different influences came to Bermuda because basically we were in the middle of the trade winds. Um, so how do we get newer investment? Well, the key is going to be to that. Firstly, the clarity in doing business in Bermuda. One of the problems we face right now is there's a lot of not just red tape, but there's a lot of, I call it gray tape or gray cloud around doing business. In other words, you're never quite sure how something's going to work out, or you're never quite sure what the actual process is. And again, I spoke to it earlier about how many businesses in Bermuda exist almost solely to just navigate these challenges. Just think about how many independent immigration specialists practice in Bermuda right now because it's hard to navigate that space. So to attract people in, we have to provide clarity, certainty, and stability. And we also have to be willing to have a tough conversation with those investors, because right now there's a this dependency on the Bermuda government, and by the way, when I say Bermuda government, I mean the Bermuda taxpayer, to effectively backstop or guarantee or in some way participate in the business transaction. And FYI, billions and billions of dollars of transactions are done in Bermuda every day that do not require the intervention of the taxpayer. So our idea is that the Bermuda taxpayer should not be on the hook for these investments.
Thank you for that. And we're actually going to go back to the minister because we do have a question for you. Employment is a serious consideration for young Bermudians when deciding whether to return to Bermuda immediately or after they get international experience, which is a common thing that we hear. Tell us how a PLP government would attract and maintain talent in Bermuda.
Well, we have an economy now that is creating opportunities for young persons. We need to do a better job at connecting young persons with those opportunities. That was part of the youth employment strategy we had set out, and executing the goals in that strategy will lead to better connectivity between our young people and job opportunities. And we want to be deliberate about it. For example, we put in place the graduate training program, and that specifically connects graduates to future job prospects in a meaningful way where that person is able to go into the workplace and share their value. And I'm pleased to say that a large percentage of those individuals are actually being retained in the workplace from that one initiative. But the Department of Workforce Development is in the process of refining itself. We will produce a better platform which young persons can actually use, log in the information, but also get career guidance, and better understand career pathways. For example, a young person who says they want to be in international business, that platform will make it clear every job that is in the workplace underneath a company in international business, what is the educational requirements, what is the experience requirements, and then we'll also have industry give testimonials as to what the day-to-day workplace looks like, and also have more mentors. In Bermuda, networking is extremely important, and we'll also create more networking opportunity for our young persons. I want every young person listening to this understand that when we say that we have an aging population, we have over 30% of our workforce that is 55 years and older. It means that there is going to be ample opportunities for young persons as it pertains to jobs. But it also means that we're going to have an acute shortage of workers. Right now, there are more jobs in Bermuda than able-bodied Bermudians. And that challenge is going to get even worse. And so when you see our job numbers, and it looks like the majority of jobs, the new jobs, are actually being created for non-Bermudians. That is because all we're doing in the Bermudian side is replacement. We have a large portion of retirees that are leaving every year, and we have Bermudians that are placing those retirements. So our net numbers look low, when in actual fact, we could have created 1,000 jobs for Bermudians, and we could have had 1,000 Bermudians exiting the workforce because of retirement. And so on an annual basis, there will be ongoing opportunities. We will do a better job with reaching out to our young persons who are studying abroad and connecting them with opportunities and engage them before they even return home. And that is all in the youth employment strategy as it pertains to some of the work we want to do. But second to that, what we want to do is build out this new modernized platform that makes job searching more easier for our young persons, but also gives employers an opportunity to see the talent that our young persons have, and they can actually choose from those profiles and connect with those profiles on that platform.
Yeah, I want to bring in Jarion on this because we spoke to Victoria Cunningham yesterday, and she talked about how the OBA is quite keen on supporting young people in their efforts to become entrepreneurs or just to get employment. Tell us a bit more about what the OBA would do to maintain and attract young people in Bermuda.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to the Victoria Cunningham piece, and then I'll speak to an idea that is related. So first things first is that we in the OBA always work with young persons to support them and mentor them into new industries when they want to transition. And Victoria is probably our best example of that. But I would argue that most of the growth when we see a young person who says, "Look, I want to try out international business, or I want to try out entrepreneurship or journalism or something like that," then we have the experience in those industries that we go sit down, have a cup of coffee, let's talk. Because FYI, there was no roadmap for my generation, so there's a lot of stub toes and scratch knees in growing into these industries that we don't want people to experience. We want to tell them, listen, this is how you do it. This is how you network. This is how you speak to so and so, and there's fantastic opportunities. So it's just part of our culture because we believe that Bermudians should be in all of these places. But to connect it, I want to talk about protecting the young person's aspirations because it's quite easy to get disillusioned in Bermuda. You know, you can go to a number of job interviews and things like that. The way that to stop that is to stop the abuse of the system. And when I say that, I mean that there are some people who um, enforcing current immigration rules and standards is very, very important. It's that abuse will ensure that opportunities are not lost in the current market, and that means that a young person has a shot. So those people who game the system, so to speak, rename a job title or they add an additional requirement that's not required for that job, that sort of thing has to absolutely come to a stop and very, very quickly, because that's those positions that are getting played with, so to speak. Those are the positions that we can fill, and then that allow for us to move up the corporate ladder, give us the experience necessary. We've all gone to that job that says you've got the qualifications, or we'd love to have you, but you have no experience. Well, where do you get the experience? You get it in the junior ranks, and you get it based on you're able to learn in those positions, and then move into assistant underwriter, technical underwriter, blah blah blah, if that's your chosen path. So in order to make sure that young persons come into Bermuda, stay in Bermuda, young Bermudians, they have to be given a fair shot at the job market. And that fair shot includes many things, and I want to just say that it includes enforcement as well, transparent and effective enforcement of the existing rules.
Ture, if
Thank
I
you for
can
that.
just add to that.
Yeah.
And so this government, we expanded closed and restricted job categories primarily to protect jobs for Bermudians and young Bermudians returning to Bermuda. This government is um, accelerated the dual enrollment program and also ensured that there is funding for young persons to go to Bermuda College. This government has increased scholarships. This government has increased summer employment programs. We've increased graduate training programs, all to better support our young persons. Our racket has been abundantly clear, and our commitment to the young person is demonstrated with the work that we've done in those particular spaces. So, on top of the youth employment strategy I outlined, it is a clear commitment that we've had to ensuring that our young people have access to opportunities.
Thanks for that addition. Aj, over to you.
Well, I think this, are we wrapping up? Yep. All right. So to close, we're going to give both the leader of the opposition, Jarion Richardson, and Minister Hayward an opportunity to offer any final remarks for 2 minutes each. Minister Hayward, we will start with you.
Certainly, thank you for having me, and I enjoy dialogue such as this, which we're allowed to show our clear different policy positions between the government and the opposition. But to make it abundantly clear, elections matter. And on February 18th, voters will have a choice between a government that has clearly stood by their side and the opposition. This is a government that has increased labor protections. We've increased social protections. We've increased the minimum wage. We've ensured that we increase support for our seniors. We've increased support for child daycare. We've put young people on the housing ladder. We will be accelerating the expansion of affordable housing. And over the last 7 years or so, we've demonstrated that we actually care for the people of Bermuda. And our racket is actually um, something that I'm proud of. I work with a group of people who have worked extremely hard over this period of time. And um, I think if the population clearly want to make a rational choice, they look at the accomplishments of what the Progressive Labour Party has done, and then look at the platform as to what we say we'll do. And I believe any rational individual will come to the conclusion that the Progressive Labour Party is in their best interest.
Thank you so much. Next, Opposition Leader Jarion Richardson.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks for the opportunity. Look, Bermuda's the best place in the world. It just is. We all love it, and we all want it to succeed. And one of the things that makes it so successful is that it is that melting pot that other countries aspire to be. It's got a long history of incredible contributions from a lot of people, and it's just a fantastic place. It's our culture is so unique, everything about us, and to that end, the goal of the One Bermuda Alliance is to protect, preserve, and expand the nature of Bermuda, how fantastic it is. I can definitely say I'm very hopeful for the future. I'm hopeful because I know that there's things that we can do that will radically alter the quality of life that people are having today. And one of them is, in this conversation is population. There was a time when there were 5,000 Americans posted here, and no one thought anything different about it. Now, I think that we could have something very similar, but again, balancing, making sure we have those protections. But I'm telling you, hands down, I've walked through the deserts of Morocco. I've I, I- I've seen some bits of the world, and I'm telling you, hands down, I got off the plane every time I came back from assignments, and I kissed the ground because this is the best place in the world, and we now just have to make sure that we preserve and protect it and attract enough people to participate in it. And I know that that's in our future, and that's why I think you should vote for the One Bermuda Alliance. Thanks.
Oz, you're muted, boo.
I'm acting like I've never done this before. Good. Thank you so much to the both of you for tuning in to our panel discussion as part of the Bermuda Youth Connect's general election events. See you soon and have a good afternoon.